Hello, and welcome back to
Hello.
Chaos Agents.
Wait,
The
sorry,
podcast.
I messed that up for you. Do it again. Do it
Great,
again.
let's have a hello. Oh, it's great. Okay.
I thought it was like a call and response thing, you know. You were gonna say hello, and then I was gonna say hello.
It's great, perfect. Great. Well, we're back. Chaos Agents, the podcast where we learn about AI so you don't have to. Becca, how are you doing? Hello.
Hello. I am doing great and medium. Medium just because the overall state of affairs in the world and
Especially in the
America
US.
is
And yeah.
a lot.
A lot.
But in general, I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, same. Learning, things are moving. It feels good to do. It feels good to do stuff at the local level. So that's what I've been trying to focus on.
Girl, what have you been doing at the local level?
So we're at the local level. I've been getting involved. There is a great St. Luke's. It's the only church in New York City that did in the 80s did services for folks that were impacted by HIV. They're really awesome. There's a off-Broadway show that was about them called Saturday Services, I think, or Saturday Church. And they've been really great. And so I've been trying to put my energy into that. They do a lot of like outreach.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
All right, St. Luke's.
They're the best. Shout out to St. Luke's in the West Village.
Shout out to St. Luke's. Oh, that reminds me. Before we talk about like stuff we're learning this week, I have a shout out.
Yes. Yes.
We have a shout out.
We have a shout out.
We want to give a shout out to Mario Savi, who
Ba-ba-ba-ba-bam.
we love you, Mario. Mario wrote the kindest shout out about the Chaos Agents podcast, and Mario's not even related to either of us.
I know. We're both like, is Mario your best friend? Like, what?
Yeah, is Mario your cousin?
I didn't hate this man.
But like,
it was so nice.
it was
When you
so
put
nice.
something on the internet, like in the world, and then somewhat people receive it well, it's the best feeling.
Really. So like, Mario, if you're listening, we really appreciate you, and thank you so much for listening. And you made our day.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah.
So what are you learning about? Yeah.
Okay. So I learned about two things this week, and I want you to choose your own adventure on
Okay, great.
which you think is more interesting.
See all of the above.
Okay. One is more like businessy,
Okay.
and one is more techy. Actually, I just chose for you. I'm going to go with the tech
Perfect.
one because here's why.
Great.
You are an engineer. I am not. I'm trying to learn more, and I feel like I just learned something. It's like somewhat of a core concept that I want to like tell you what I learned, and you as my teacher, like tell me if I got it.
Great. You're going to be my teacher, and then great. Perfect.
Okay.
I can't wait.
Okay, Professor Chips. Thank you for hearing me out.
Welcome to class.
Okay, so the headline of what I learned this week is that Replit is a really good web server, but it's a bad browser host. And here's how I learned that and learned what that even means. So the project that I was working on is I have in my company Slack, I created a private Slack channel that only I am a member of called
Yeah, so
Becca
you
Feed.
just go, you're like, hey, Becca, how's your day?
Yeah, it's literally just me posting stuff to me, and it's called Becca Feed, and it's learnings, thoughts, whatever throughout the day. I just kind of drop in there, and I built a Replit web app that basically takes those Slack posts and like renders them in a really nice like public facing UI. And makes it look, it's almost kind of like my own like little Twitter feed. Because I wanted to be able to like share that with people.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's like my behavior is the same. I just throw stuff into Slack, but like other people can read it and look at it. And I hate X and don't want to go on it. And so I was like, I'll just build my own. But then I was like, fuck, like I work in VC. I feel the need to be active on X. You can hear the lack of enthusiasm on in my voice.
Yeah.
So I was like, how can I figure out an automation where like I can just keep doing this, but like I never have to touch X, but like X gets all my shit. So I built an automation where when one of my posts in the feed is tweet character length, it automatically queues it up and posts it on my Twitter as if I had posted it.
Cool.
But for the stuff that's too long, I was like, what should I do with that? And I came up with a couple ideas. I was like, maybe I should summarize it. And then like that didn't work super well. And then I was like, you know what would be a cool experiment? What if I could use Playwright and Chromium to screenshot the post and tweet it as an image automatically?
Sweet screenshot like in your fancy UI?
Correct. So in the UI, like screenshot what the message looks like and
then
like
tweet that.
Exactly.
If it's longer. Yeah. Okay, cool. Smart.
Okay, thanks. I sort of brainstormed that with Gemini and like that's what I came up with. Great. That's what Gemini and I came up with. Okay, so I with Gemini sort of went about figuring out how to implement this and then got to work with my Replit agent in like implementing that framework.
Perfect.
And I got it sort of working in dev, but then when I pushed my code to production, it wasn't working in production.
Okay.
And I couldn't figure out why. I kept going back and forth with the Replit agent. I was like, this isn't working. And it would try something and nothing would get fixed. And then I figured out why. And this is the thing I learned that I want Professor Chips to evaluate me on.
Okay, great.
Okay. So what I learned is I was running into that Playwright's browser installation was failing during the build process of going to production because it was trying to like basically install Playwright libraries at like the root level, and Replit's build environment does not allow that.
The Replit build environment does not allow installs.
Replit's production code is like a very locked down container.
It's like a sandbox, and you can't do like a bunch of stuff.
Okay, so exactly what you just said. I was like, I've heard these terms over the course of my time in tech: sandbox, container, blah blah blah, and like I loosely understood what it meant, but like not really. And so this is what I finally like learned. So here's my attempt at explaining like what a container is.
Okay.
A container is kind of like a hotel room for your code. Okay. When you stay in a hotel, you have everything you need. You've got bed, bathroom, electricity. But you can't like knock down walls and like rewire the electricity or like change the plumbing in your hotel room. Otherwise the hotel would be like, no, correct.
Yeah, get out of here.
And essentially a container works the same way. It's like, here's the box, stay within these bounds. We've already got everything you need, but like, don't try and like rebuild anything here. Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely correct. And then I would take I'm guessing right now, but I think the difference between a sandbox and a container, because I think the word container specifically applies to things like Kubernetes, where it's like data. It's like a data container. You know what? I'm going to actually, while we're on the pod.
Yeah. Look this up because the thing, like Docker.
Yeah.
Like, isn't a Docker instance Excuse me, a container?
Yes.
Okay, and is that different than a data container?
No, that's exactly what a data container is. 'Cause
Okay.
Docker, yeah. Okay, here we go. Uh, Great. You're using it. Yeah, Docker. Okay, great.
Okay,
So
tell
the
me what you
container
found
is
out.
exactly what you're talking about.
Okay,
Is
and
the like it shares the host OS kernel, but you don't have access to the actual operating system or like and then in this case it's an actual like labeled mechanism on your operating system, where a sandbox is more like not based on a specific technology.
okay. And my next like question for myself was like, why do containers exist? And from my understanding, it's because like before containers, developers used to be like, I built this thing, it works on my machine. And then I hand it off to you and it crashes because, you know, you have a different version of Linux or we're missing a specific file. And so what a container does is it like packages your code together so that like with only the specific files and things it needs to run, so that it's like portable and isolated and you like can distribute it or share it. Is that essentially correct?
Yeah, that's just, I think the container. So if you take a step back, I think one of the big things about containers is we all used to have our own full servers, like our own compute. Like in order to get something on the internet, you had to have your own server to host it. And or you had to own a server where like I would take Becca's website and host it on my server. I would take Olive's website and post it on my server. But then what containers did too is allow us to use the same server, like you and I, but I don't see your stuff and you don't see my stuff. And so neither of us need to actually own the server. So a container allows like exactly what you're talking about. Like if I install XYZ in my container and tell Sarah about it, then she can install XYZ and then have the same environment that I do. But also it allows like us to use the same environment and me not see your things and have that security boundary.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like then my next question, which like in hindsight, I'm like, okay, I think I should have known this, but like was, okay, hang on. You know, I install libraries in Replit projects all the time. Like how do I know what libraries I can install and what is like at the root level? And what I think I understand is like, there's like different types of, let's say, libraries. There's like stuff that lives in like your backpack, like your, it's a file. So like, you know, like a, Express or pandas, which are just like files that are written in like JavaScript or Python, and you can just add them as files to your project directory, versus like libraries that are like at the operating system level, like Playwright, where it's like infrastructure. Like Chromium's not just a library, it's like a really big complex piece of software, I know, that needs to talk directly to the computers, like video drivers, font engines, security layers, their system dependencies, and like that lives like in the building, not just like in your folder.
That's a really good point. Yeah, like it's the difference between, to your point, like if we're using your analogy, like a package like pandas or something like that is what you're saying, just JavaScript. So that could be just like, I'm bringing my own pillow to this hotel room. Like, and I'm going to like, because I hate their pillows, and that's great. But something like Chromium is a binary. And so like a binary gets installed on the computer and it has access to file system. It as like, so the reason why it won't let you install Chromium is not because of Chromium, but it's so you can't install like Becca's bad software. Like that's going
it's
to wipe.
protection.
Yeah, exactly.
Theoretically.
Exactly. So that in that analogy, it's kind of like I can't install my new TV in the wall in my hotel room.
Okay, interesting. Fascinating. So cool. Wow, great. Thank you for helping me understand that better.
Yeah, it's really it's and also so it's a hot tip from me. This won't affect you actually. One thing
Give us
I've
the
run
hot tip
into
though. Give us the hot tip.
the hot tip is often if it's since it's your website, this won't happen. But often when you're trying to do screenshots on a platform like Replit or Lovable or like anything that allows you to like host code that you run, if it's on AWS, most large websites look for AWS, like browsers that are on AWS because, and block them in some way because they know it's probably like screen scraping technology. It's probably a bot. So if you ever need to do screenshots, like if you ever need to do lots of screenshots, you either need to do it on your local machine or you need to use, there's like rotating IP addresses that you can buy.
Okay, so then actually on this note, like knowing what my project is and like sort of
Yeah.
what I want to do here, like high level at least, and we're just brainstorming here, like how would you go about building this or suggesting I
actually,
build
this
this?
is a good one. I would do it. I would install the program on your local machine because
Okay.
you can have Chromium. Like you can install Chromium on your computer and you can do, and there's something called a headless browser. And
Yep.
what a headless browser does is like, it won't pull up a browser. You won't see it. So
Yep.
it'll just be running in the background. And that's
Yep.
not going to cost you like a lot of bandwidth to just like, I don't, how are you doing it? Are you doing it like ever so often you check your site to see if there's a new one?
So basically here's how it currently works. I'll post max 3 or 4 times a day. It's not like
Yeah.
super frequent. And each time I post a webhook is sent to a Zap I have set up in Zapier.
Yeah.
That has a payload with like the text of the post. And
Yeah.
then it will count the number of characters. And if it's like under 250 characters, it'll say, okay, great. Just make this into a tweet, add it. I use Buffer, add it to my Buffer Twitter queue, and it will
Yeah.
tweet it. If it's over 250 characters, then it'll route it through this like other path that what I want that path to do is say like basically like run this script that, or actually let me back up. What I initially was trying to do was have code in my Replit web app that for each post uses a headless browser to create a screenshot and host that image in my database, my production database of my web app. So
Yeah.
every post has a image associated with it of the post, so that when that payload gets sent to Zapier and it gets routed down this other path, it like has the image already.
Great.
If it's in that category.
And where does your database live? Does it live in your Replit instance?
It does. Right now it does.
Yeah, from your local machine, you could probably send it up to your database. That way you don't have to like store everything locally. You could just like.
So how do I?
So wait, what is the trigger? It's like when you post, it does that?
When I post. It's when there's a new post in the feed.
You could probably, so you could probably do, that's a good question. So the way I would approach this actually is when I post, I would ping my local machine from my, you're posting from lots of different places, right? Like you're not just on your computer. You might be on your mobile phone. You might be.
Yeah, it's just computer and mobile, but it's always Slack. It's always just this one Slack channel.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You can have your local machine listen to that Slack channel to see if like something comes up and then run that process for getting a screenshot after, like if it sees an update from your Slack channel. But that means your computer's always on. So like, I think there's there has to be a service. This is actually much easier. You know what you could actually do? You could surpass this whole thing. There has to be a service somewhere that takes HTML, CSS and creates an image for you.
Okay, that is potential. There also, I think, is like
Because then you don't have to screenshot at all.
there was something else that Gemini told me about, where like there are screenshot library. There's like hold on, let me find what this was about. Screenshot One or Screenshot API. Let me see what that is. There's something called Screenshot One, which is like a separate service that's like an API that it's called the Screenshot API for developers, and it renders screenshots in one simple API call instead of managing browser clusters.
Oh, great. It'll do it for you.
That's what it says based on me reading their website for about 3 seconds. But to your point, then maybe there's other added complexities around like the AWS issue you were talking about, or like, I don't know. Well, I'll have to explore that.
Yeah. I think that shouldn't be the case with your website. So that actually might be an easier thing. So you don't have to run the whole like browser process yourself.
Okay, I'm going to play around with that and I'll report back next.
Great. Amazing.
Next episode. Thank you for the brainstorm.
Yeah. Awesome. Today we're learning about trust and safety with a former coworker of yours. When did you guys work together?
Yeah. So my last job in product before I started working at VC was at Grindr, which I was so fortunate to work with an amazing group of people, all of whom were so good at their jobs. And one of the product directors that I learned the most from was Juliet Shen, who was sort of head of trust and safety at Grindr, has a ton of experience in the space, and is now building open source trust and safety AI stuff. So
that's amazing. Buy any trust and safety person you know coffee, because they're keeping you safe on the internet.
Amen.
That's great.
Nice.
Awesome. Fun. It could just be.
All right, everyone. So excited for our guest on the pod today. Want to welcome Juliet Shen, who is first and foremost my go-to person for learning about anything trust and safety in product. To give you a little bit of a TLDR on her amazing background, she essentially built out the trust and safety platform at Snap. Ever heard of it? and then also at Grindr, which is where we met, and I had the pleasure of working with her and learning from her. And then after that, she went on to tackle spam and abuse at Google. Did some research on trust and safety at Columbia, and now she is in her entrepreneur era, building open source software for trust and safety as a co-founder and head of product at Roost, which is a nonprofit. So welcome, Juliet, to Chaos Agents.
Thank you both so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited for the talk.
Awesome. I was thinking we could start pretty foundational here. And can you explain, like, what is trust and safety?
Yeah, for sure. And this is something that comes up actually often, just because I think that it's in the world of tech, it's like a relatively new term. And by new, I mean like 10 to 20 years old. But it hasn't really picked up steam outside of the actual industry. So when I'm at parties, I like to explain trust and safety as like anything bad that happens on the internet, that's trust and safety. But I think, when we're actually thinking about the definition, it's a pretty broad term referring to both kind of the teams and functions at different companies and platforms, as well as the technology that's used to kind of protect users from each other online and from, like automated stuff online. So yeah, anything bad that happens on the internet, but the specific term for everyone who's trying to protect people from it.
And can you like give a couple examples of like what that looks like in practice, especially from a product perspective, maybe based on like some of your experience from like Snap or Grindr, that would be very interesting and helpful.
Yeah, definitely. So, trust and safety was first like named as a term at eBay, looking at marketplace integrity. So like
Mm,
fake reviews, people selling fake products. And so that was innately an impact on the product. How can they kind of like protect their marketplace by adding in different guardrails, different features that make it harder for like scammers or bad actors to kind of exploit that platform. I think in today, you see this kind of like appear in a lot of consumer technology, right? So there's kind of the more preventative safety that you can kind of weave into product. And I feel strongly that you're a really good product manager if you're also including that as part of your product design. You're thinking through all the worst case scenarios of like maybe you built this really fun feature and you never intended for it to have this completely weird edge case that allows people to harass each other. But you
mm,
should be thinking about that as you're designing and thinking through the user journeys. So that's actually a concept called safety by design. Is like how do you actually bake in the best practices of keeping people safe directly into that product experience? And it could be something like maybe adding a pause to when you're sending messages on a dating app, adding a little intervention. It's like, hey, like, are you sure you want to say that? Um, it could be things like, like maybe it prioritizes content or video that's shot directly from the camera versus uploaded from a camera roll. Those
mm.
are all kind of like small product decisions that have a huge impact on the level of risk or danger that a user can have online. And then there's kind of like the other side of trust and safety, which is bad things will always happen, especially if there's any platform that allows for user generated content. So anyone posting a message, anyone uploading a photo, bad stuff is going to happen because people are weird and people like being weird on the internet. Um, so I think on the product side there, you can think through kind of like what can users do if they encounter something that makes them uncomfortable, that makes them feel like they are in danger, or they see something that they really did not want to see. Are there pathways that are intuitive for them to kind of like let the company know, like, hey, this thing happened to me. I need to tell you about it so that you can actually investigate and do something about it. Or, like what I also like is like, can you build in controls that give the user a lot more autonomy and empower them to make decisions on their own? Grindr did this really well, where they have these features where you can mute someone that you're having a conversation with, you can ban them yourself. You can kind of like control your own experience in addition to flagging it to the company to take a closer look. And then there's like kind of like all the kind of like the sausage making of trust and safety work, which is like on the company side, what are the types of technologies and tools that the internal teams have to look into abuse, whether one of the users flagged it for the company or if they are using some kind of like classifier or model to try to like proactively find something. Like what does that machine look like?
Hmm.
That's really neat. I feel like I was talking about this the other day, and I'm sure you've seen this. I feel like anytime you build something, even when you're trying to help people, like even like think about Roblox, like the most like innocent thing. Kids are just going having the best time, and I think people build things and they get them out there, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I never intended for this crazy use case that like so weird that someone figured out how to be abusive on this platform or how to take advantage of someone on this platform happen. Do you, when you think about the way, do you, because of your background in trust and safety, do you feel like you think about building differently? Of like, do you just assume, okay, if this is successful, someone's going to use it weird? How can I make sure that doesn't happen, or how can I make sure they're protected? Do you
Yeah,
kind of,
it's definitely.
yeah? Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, it's definitely something I think about when I'm building products and also when I'm talking to other PMs. I think especially if you're part of a larger company, you're interfacing with other PMs who are building stuff that are totally in a different scope or different domain or different surface, right? And they might not know the worst case scenario of like, oh, like, this new feature is coming out. I don't know how to protect it because I don't have this paranoid brain that's constantly thinking about the ways that people can misuse things. I think that it's important to not over index on those things. And, you can also, that's a really fast way of kind of like preventing innovation and scale of the product, but you have to consider and factor that in. It's an edge case, but there needs to be a solution for that edge case. And I think, especially from my time doing a lot of this trust and safety work over the years, there's this instinct and there's these kind of developed standards of like what are the harms that are absolutely unacceptable that we absolutely need to reduce the risk of, and what are ones where it's like, okay, we have a way to handle that. We have a way to either direct that to a team or like direct that to like a safety model, but like if that happens, we have a plan. The worst thing is if you build a product and you don't have a plan for those things.
Yeah.
So there's something that's been top of mind for me actually recently because of a movie I watched a couple nights ago. I'm curious if you guys have seen this. I'm like forgetting the name of the movie right now. It's with Lily Reinhart. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, yes, I do. I think it's called like American Sweatshop or
American
something.
Sweatshop. Yes, thank you.
Oh, what is
Okay.
this? No, I haven't seen this.
Okay. So basically, she plays a woman who works in a content moderating like center where, you know, the folks who are like the third parties where a platform like Facebook or YouTube or whatever is like, hey, anything that gets flagged as potentially like against our like guidelines, you need to a human needs to watch and then determine if it's like good or bad. And I'm sure you guys have, I mean, Julia, I know you have, Sarah, I'm sure you've read or seen things about the impact like psychologically and mental health wise that that has on folks who work there, who really work in places like that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm curious. My thought when I was watching that was, wow, like this is potentially a great area to apply AI where you can have vision models instead of human beings essentially watching these videos, determining what's going on, and coming up with the answer. And thus you're not exposing actual people's brains to like trauma and the impact of this. I'm just like curious in general about both of you, but like especially Juliet, like your take on that and what you're seeing in the space.
Yeah, that movie definitely made the rounds in all the trust and safety kind of like group chats and Slack communities I'm in. I think that quick spoiler like warning, not for the movie, but just for like themes in general. But there have been like two pieces of like pop culture media that talk about the content moderator experience. There's
Mm.
American Sweatshop, and then there's this play that was on Broadway called Job. And
Oh, interesting.
and so like small spoiler warning for anyone who's listening or watching, but like there's this emerging trope that content moderators all develop psychosis and want to murder someone, and I don't love that. Um,
Fair way to call that out.
Not a huge fan of that. Could
Yeah.
we pull off the greatest heist in history? Probably, but the murder part, maybe not. But jokes aside, I think that content, like, and what you said, Becca, like it pulls at a few different points. One is doing that work is deeply traumatizing. I was looking around to see if I have this book to show you, but there's this book by this researcher named Dr. Sarah T. Roberts. It's called Behind the Screen, and it's really focused entirely on those kind of content moderation centers and really diving into like what is the human cost of doing this type of commercial content moderation at scale. And at the same time, there are AI models that can do those things of like finding blood in the content, like that is something that computer vision is pretty good at, whether it can separate between like, here's a plastic surgery video or a pimple popping video that people want to watch versus here's a gory video that people don't want to watch.
Right.
That's a little bit harder, but I think with this new generation of AI models, that context can be added. I think a lot of us who have been in the trust and safety space for a long time really recognize the toll that it's taken. I myself have struggled with mental health over the years. I often joke is like, hey, like maybe we don't need new members of the complex PTSD club. Maybe we can close that membership door in the context of trust and safety and deploy AI in the places where it actually makes sense. Because I think there's a delicate line here, right? I think that there's a lot of people who think that AI will replace these jobs completely. And I don't think that's true. From a technical standpoint, I don't think these models can actually take in the complex nuance of some of these situations. And then two, I do think there's still so much where humans need to kind of like apply that human judgment and apply their own lived experience. But for things like, CSAM that the industry already knows about, we know what it looks like, we know
Hey,
what
Sam,
like,
can you just
Mhm.
uh
Oh yes.
define that acronym real quick?
CSAM stands for child sexual abuse material. I think in years past, people called it child pornography, but we've been trying to move away from that term because pornography really should be referring to consenting adults, and children cannot consent. So CSAM is one of the biggest things that trust and safety teams have to deal with is like wherever someone could upload media, there's most likely going to be CSAM. So there are established ways to kind of like detect it, and not expose it to either the moderator to more users. And the reason for that is every time someone sees that, that survivor who's in the media gets re-victimized because someone is looking at that again. So there are some things where it does make sense to try to use AI on. I'll come back to CSAM because that's kind of a sensitive one,
Mm-hmm.
around AI usage and that. But for things like gore, things like beheadings, like people don't need to keep seeing that. And I do think that's a huge area where AI can help.
That makes a lot of sense. I wonder if I imagine there's a lot of ethics in AI conversations happening in the trust and safety community. I wonder if, like right now, we're in a world, I was thinking about this yesterday, we're in a world where all the AIs that we generally interact with are very friendly and warm and are just here to support us. And I imagine, like, with all the like open models, it's still very expensive to train AI, so this would be a really big undertaking. But as time goes on, I imagine it gets cheaper, and it would not. There is a world where, and there already is nefarious AI. If you like when it comes to people that are like pig butchering scams and things like that. What is that conversation happening right now in the trust and safety community? How are people thinking about that and how to approach it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that a theme that I've heard come up is about how kind of the harms that took place on the internet in like, early mid 2000s, the social media era, they're still around, but they're scaled at a huge, huge rate now because of AI. A lot of the telltale signals, for example, on dating apps, like, it used to be pretty easy to spot a scammer because of the way that they message people, because, they'll start a message with like, hello, dear. But with AI, it's like, that becomes a lot more like natural language. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
harder to spot the scammers because they're all being run through AI now. And of course, scaling it, like it's a lot easier to create botnets to just
Yeah.
automate anything bad you want to do. And at the same time, like we not only have to deal with these like larger tidal waves of the old harms, but there are brand new harms that AI does introduce. I think we have yet to really understand the impact of agentic abuse and agentic risk. And I think that when we talk about open source AI, there's some really powerful benefits there, and of course there are some trade-offs. On the benefit side, there's so much more transparency to understand what training data is in these models, how are they developed, who developed it, who like what was that methodology and how did they really perform. I think that it is inherently safer than black box algorithms or models where you don't really know what's happening under the hood. And of course, like by making it democratic, by making it pluralist, by making it easier to access this type of like cutting edge technology, with scale comes abuse. There will be people who want to exploit open source models, but I do think that um, if we push towards a more open society and develop AI in the open, there's more opportunities for collective vigilance to understand what are the vulnerabilities of these different models and to understand how they could be potentially abused.
Yeah.
I want to like definitely get into like on the point of open source models and trust and safety and like what you're working on now. But you just said something that like really piqued my curiosity, and I'm that I wanted to ask you about, which is you said that AI models introduce new types of harm or like new ways of facilitating abuse online. I'm curious if you could like tell us what that is or like what that looks like and like what both from the perspective of like you as a technology builder, but also for all of us as like just consumers of media and like users, like what kind of stuff should people just be aware is like potentially happening on platforms now?
I think it's a lot of the things where, in prior trust and safety experience, we kind of like thought about things in like broad binaries. One is like, okay, this is automated abuse. This is spam. These are scams. They're bots. They're romance scammers. And then there's kind of like the longer running, like user to user harms. And I said romance scams for bots, but it actually belongs more in that kind of human to human harm. Like these are going to be longer term interactions, where
Did you say
typically like
romance scams?
romance scams, yes.
Okay. So this is like when
Uh,
someone's like, "Hey, like, like trying to like cozy up to someone," and then being like, "I really need like $5,000 for my whatever," and they're like,
Right.
"Oh, sure, honey, yeah, 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 yeah."
yeah, it's like it's pig butchering, but it's also, like it's been around for ages. Like one of my first trust and safety jobs was at Tinder, and I was looking into romance scams
Oh,
all the time.
Hmm.
And these attackers are patient. They're willing to go a long time, and in the
Wow.
past, that required a human to do it. I think when we're thinking about the ways that
Ah,
agentic AI can introduce is like now you can just have an agent doing that, and it can do that with 50 or like 5,000 conversations at the same time. So the scale of the kind of like
wow.
previously like complex, hard to find human to human harm is now scaled rapidly through AI.
yeah.
That's wild.
Is this kind of what you're thinking about, and maybe this with what you're building? Because, uh, and it could be not. So I'm assuming, but I think one thing we've heard in the news a lot recently is consent. Like consent in AI, with imagery. We've been seeing a lot of people talking about like the ability for AI to create images of people that they didn't consent to that might be exploitative. Is that kind of what you're thinking of, like being able to fight at that scale, or and I don't know if no fight is the right term, is it maybe identify, but what are you thinking about when you're approaching what you're building with AI?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you asked because you're right. I think that the bad actors and abusers and like these networks of people who are making a living or just being entertained from causing chaos and harm, they talk to each other. They share practices. If there's a new kind of like agentic AI, if there's a new open source model that is really powerful tool for them to cause harm, they distribute it among their networks. We don't really do that on the platform, like the defender protector side, because, like company privacy, everyone's got their own proprietary technology. So a lot of what we're trying to do at Roost is how can we take those like core building blocks of safety technology and put them in the public domain? How can we create a public commons and create really robust, high quality, production grade safety technology that can kind of be like collaboratively worked on? Because I think that the more eyes on something, the more secure it becomes. More people can notice like vulnerabilities or risks. And these are like kind of like they're like the primitives, right? Like everyone can still build their own complex like internal systems, but that the core functions don't need to be built and rebuilt over and over again. So we actually at Roost, like we're working in the open. We published our project roadmap on GitHub for public feedback, and it actually states that like, right now we're trying to get those MVP projects out, things like a rules engine, an event streaming investigation tool, a scalable like review console so you can actually take a look at what's going on, hash matching. But then later on our roadmap going into next year and 2027 or 2026 now, going into this year and next year, we do want to introduce those kind of like AI components to our tools because we think that equipping the teams that are fighting the abuse with the same level of technology and functionality is really important for us to stay ahead or at least keep up with what the bad actors are doing.
So does this mean that like your essentially your primary customers or users are like trust and safety teams at technology companies who are building or not even trust and safety teams necessarily, but just like any product team who's building something that wants to make sure that they have the right protections in place, especially if they're building something that's like an AI native product. They go to Roost and you guys essentially are arming them with like the toolkit they need.
Yeah, pretty much. I think trust and safety teams are, of course, like the people who are going to be most familiar with our tools. But what we've really found is that like startup founders, developers, hobby developers, people who want to create the next unicorn AI consumer app, those are the ones who are kind of like really curious and interested in Roost because maybe they're a small team. Maybe they don't have someone who has safety experience. Maybe they don't have a dedicated trust and safety person, but they do want to make sure their users have a good user experience. Or, like maybe they're interested in complying with like that legislation that deals with online safety and content moderation. So we want to equip them with those building blocks. And honestly, some of the smaller and medium companies as well, where they may have established teams, but maybe they only have like one person on that team. They also need those like powerful tools. We really want to take kind of like the same technology that's been scaled and built at like the big companies and make it equally accessible and free to use for smaller developers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the talking to you is reminding me one of the concepts I learned from a trust and safety expert, something that really carried me, and I think about often. Cesar, I used to work with him at Stack Overflow, and he talked to me a lot about impact versus intent, and how like for example, if you're walking down the street and you trip and like you spill your hot coffee on someone, you burn them, and your intent was never, you're not someone that wants to burn people with coffee, you're just like walking down the street and having a nice day. However, your impact is now this person has been burned with coffee, and what responsibility do you have? Of course you're going to like help them clean up and like do what you can. And when it comes to building things, it's very similar, right? Like we talked about that a little bit earlier of like, I just want to build a fun game for people, or I want people to be friends online, or I want them to collaborate in this way. But then that impact can be like a bad actor uses it as a way to take advantage of people. And then what responsibility do the founders have there? And so a tool like open source tools like what you're talking about is, I imagine, so beneficial to people who are thinking about their impact early. Of we want to make sure that we're prepared should our tool be used for something nefarious. That's great.
Thanks, yeah. And also, I think open source makes it customizable. Every platform is going to have their
Mm.
own norms. Becca, you'll appreciate this, but I always use Grindr as an example, where like when we were developing like basically I don't know if I can say this on your podcast, but like nude photo detection,
Mm-hmm.
or like dick pic detection. We want to
Yep.
make sure people are they're if they want them, they can get them. If they don't want them, they don't get them. We love
Everyone should
consent.
be able to get all the dick pics they want consensually.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
that's great.
Yes.
And what we found too is like that's one thing. And so like Grindr's concepts and like the way we thought about nudity was just different from a lot of other companies.
Mm-hmm.
Like for the photos that people upload to their profile on Grindr, like their butts were okay. We were okay with rear nudity. But what we found is that like a lot of the third party classifiers that we wanted to build, they see a butt and they're like, that's nudity. And we're like, no, 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 but it's okay. We like the butts. And we weren't able to customize that for the Grindr use case and for like our community who said that's okay. With open source technology, whether it's a model or a classifier that you can
Mm.
tune, or like, more like infrastructure based tools like what Roost is doing, that level of customization, I think, is what's going to be really, really helpful for founders and developers to make sure that their tools meet their community and their user base's needs.
Great
Yeah.
example. Love the butts example.
Yeah, I'm actually very curious about, and maybe you could talk. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this experience, but like, how did you define? Like in that case, you can define nudity, and like to your point of like the pictures, like you should have all the pictures that you consent to. What does it look like to like build in safeties for making sure that people are like, this is this content that you want, or this is this content you very much don't want? In that case.
Yeah, so I'll use another example. So using Blue Sky as an example, there's a lot of people on Blue Sky who build these labelers. And there's labelers for like NSFW content. Maybe you want to see a certain type of NSFW content and you don't want to see like another type. Maybe you love furry NSFW content. You don't want to see real people. And so it's all about opting into those labels. And so I think the same thing, the underlying technology is most likely the same. It's doing some kind of classification to say, is this NSFW content? Cool. What kind is it? And those classifiers, like you can tune on yourself. You can like look at different signals to try to figure out, is it 2D, is it 3D, whatever. But and this is me naively thinking about how labels and technology work. But like there should be a simple flag of saying, accepts NSFW photos or like opted into this labeler to say, I'm okay with seeing this. And it could be the same with Grindr or any platform that has just like that flag set, like, okay, I'm okay with this or I'm not okay with this.
To
Yeah,
your
Reddit
point
does this
on,
really well. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
is like kind of like what you were saying about like the balance between sort of the platform or product handling trust and safety for the user and giving the user autonomy to sort of participate in expressing what they do and don't want. What so I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about like some of the specific tools that you guys are building at Roost. Um, and like I think you're a great person to talk about this because you straddled this line between technical and product. But like, so you don't have to go super deep into the weeds, but like, what are some of the things in the Roost toolbox?
Yeah, so we have two flagship software products that we are launching slash just launched. So we actually just publicly announced the V1 of our first project yesterday, and this is called Osprey. You'll notice that I have named all of our products after birds or chicken related words because my humor is that of like a 65-year-old man. Um, but so So Osprey is a rules engine, and it's like an investigation tool. And so it comes with this interface where like if you have someone who wants to kind of like look into a signal, let's say this URL is going to a really gross video that you don't want on your platform. But you don't know how many times it's been posted. You don't know who's sharing it. You don't know like the scope or virality of this thing on your platform. And you don't know if it's just like people sharing it or if there's like coordinated networks of bots that are distributing this video. Um, you could use Osprey to query the data. And so whatever data you put into Osprey, it's all self-hosted on your own infrastructure. So all the stuff just stays within your own system. It's another beauty of open source.
Hmm.
You could look through whatever information you think is valuable to investigate and find those networks. You can find those new patterns of abuse, new signals, and then you can create rules to then automatically label if you just want to keep an eye on it, or you can attach those labels to an action and then take automated action. So you're fighting automated abuse with automated tools. But that open-ended investigation piece is super, super important. A lot of times on platforms, if there's like a current event, something really bad happens, and you want to know, is my platform affected? Is this person on my platform? What are they doing on my platform? They need a tool like Osprey to go figure that out.
And you can tell based on the data, like whether something is being spread by a network of bots versus people.
Depending on the sophistication of the bots, but yeah, a
Okay.
lot of times it's kind of like, oh, like, is there a pattern to all the display names that are of the accounts posting this
Mm,
thing?
Mm.
How frequently is this thing being posted? If one account is posting the same video like every 5 milliseconds, that's probably not a human.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Ah, and then you mentioned there was another. So we have Osprey, and then there was another product. What
Yeah, so
bird?
this
What
is
bird are we talking about?
it's confusing. I kind of regret it because it's Coop, so it's about chickens, but it's
Ah,
not a type of chicken.
Oh, okay,
I've
but
gotten
I get it.
feedback that this is
Yeah.
confusing. Thank you. Thank you.
that's
Um,
great.
we call it coop because a lot of things can go into the coop. You might have different types of chickens and you want
Mm,
them all live in a coop. But Coop is our flexible review tool. And this is actually a really interesting kind of origin story for both projects too. Osprey was originally developed by Discord, and that's what they
mm,
used in production to fight spam and abuse and do these investigations at
ah,
Discord. They donated that source code to Roost and then open
Cool.
sourced it with us. So we worked directly with our
cool.
engineering team to generalize all of it. So it's being used in production at Blue Sky. Discord has pulled the open source version of Osprey back internally, so they're using it in production. And then Matrix is also going to start deploying it this week. So that's one origin story. For Coop, we as Roost acquired the IP of a trust and safety startup that was no longer operating. And
Mm.
so we took the IP and we've been spending the past 6 to 7 months refactoring all of it to turn it from like a SaaS startup into an open source project.
Hmm.
So that's something we're really excited to release. The startup's name is Cove, So if you want to learn more, it's getcove.com.
Okay.
But Coop is like, it's a classic review tool. It could be used for user reports. If you have like a classifier running, anything you want to proactively detect or like just like review at scale, you can do it in Coop and you can customize whatever actions you take. And then more importantly, and I said earlier, I would get back to kind of like CSAM, AI tools. Coop is going to be the first kind of like child safety end-to-end system. We're building in the ability to do hash matching for known CSAM. So this is stuff that everyone already knows as CSAM. We don't need to look at it. We just look at that digital fingerprint.
Mm.
You send those hashes for review in Coop. And then we've actually integrated with NECMEC's reporting API. So that way the reports go to the right place. And NECMEC is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that handles
Wow.
all of these types of cases.
That's really effective. That I mean, like that's because I imagine that the tedious, like I imagine there's a manual process, and automating that process, I'm sure will hopefully help a lot of people. That's really neat.
Yeah, and there's some cases that can't be automated because, you do need that manual review to make sure that it is what you're looking for. But the detection piece, like doing that through like automated like hash matching, that's something that can definitely like make a lot of workflows a lot faster than like just waiting for someone to report it to you.
Yeah, that's great.
Is This has been like such a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. I have like a closing question for you, which is there anything that, whether it's like resources, content, whatever, that you think everyone, like you're like, if you work in product, if you work in tech, like you need to be educated on this, and like you need to read this book or you need to watch this documentary or whatever. Is there any like what's your stack that you're like everyone should look at this?
Oh, okay. I've got a few for you.
Okay.
So one is the Trust and Safety Professional Association. They're just tspa.org. They have kind of like aggregated all the expertise and knowledge from everyone in trust and safety and created this really amazing curriculum and library. So if you want to learn about like the risks of different types of products and features and how to like defend against them and adjust the design to reduce that risk, amazing resource. If you just want to learn more about trust and safety in general, and what are the different types of technologies, what are different teams, what do they do, super, super helpful. So tspa.org is like always my number one go-to. The second one for product builders and designers and founders especially, I like the Pro Social Design Network. Um, and so this is, a really cool library of essentially like best practices for healthy product design. How do you tweak that product design of like whether it's a chat platform, live streaming, posting media, like what are the things you can incorporate into the design that can encourage healthier pro-social behavior among people and reduce harms and risks too. On the builder side, I will kind of like selfishly recommend the Roost GitHub. In addition to our software projects, we also have been putting together this like directory or list of all the free open source technologies that currently exist for online safety. Most of
Wow.
them are not built by us, but I couldn't find like a mapping of like what is out there. If I'm a small team, if I want to use free open source stuff, what can I use? And so that includes like AI guardrails, it includes like data sets, it includes review tools, hash matching algorithms, different types of classifiers, PII models, like all of that stuff is in the awesome safety tools repo in the Roost GitHub.
Amazing.
Very cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. Sarah, do you have any final questions or closing words?
No, it just sounds like if you're building an AI tool now, you should be checking out Roost as like one of the first things before you roll it out there, because I think people really don't know the impact that their work can have. And if you're thinking about these things early, it's so much easier than all of a sudden ending up with a mess. Yeah.
Oh, well said. Everyone get on over to Roost, okay?
Yeah.
Don't do anything yet. Check it out first.
Thank you both
Thank
Awesome.
you,
so much for
Juliet.
having me. This has been super fun. Thanks for letting me yap.
Yeah, great.
Our pleasure.